Welcome back, everybody. It's about 20 degrees outside, and we've got to put a cylinder head on. Of course, I can't put it in the garage because I have too much crap. Alright, so I've got the block prepped to put back together. It's been a few days, and obviously flash rust has set in, so we'll have to clean that off again. But basically everything's ready. Now, one thing I noticed getting these head bolts out is I really should have known that the cylinder head was cracked between cylinders 2 and 3. For obvious reasons. But it didn't occur to me at the time. It happens. I guess in theory, on the upside, I don't have to worry about that head being flat because this is brand new, and what could possibly be wrong with it? Okay, I'm pretty sure that this goes on here, something like, oh, I don't know, like that. And now the pièce de résistance, which, as you may or may not know, is French for Japanese cylinder head.
To find me the greatest accent coach in the world.
It's true. And this is surprisingly heavy for aluminum. All right. Now for my next step, I'm in favor of actually making sure this exhaust manifold will slide onto the studs before I go ahead and bolt this head down. Because this exhaust manifold is kind of a pain. Who says there's no rooms in these little trucks? I can stand here all day. Not all day. It's cold out. I'm not going to be here all day. Make sure you pick something for your right foot that's nice and sturdy, like, oh, the starter or the steering column. Don't do this, but I'm going to, in theory, put the cylinder head onto the manifold first, like that, and then slide the manifold onto the head. Oh, the gasket moved. That's probably not great for the gasket. That's not good for the gasket, but you know what they say, it's good for the gasket, it's good for the gander. Nobody says that. Nobody
puts baby in a corner.
I think it needs to slide that way at the back. Have I cut myself already? I have. I swear, every single time. Oh, make sure you get all your shots, kids. Playing with cars is fun. Oh, there we go. Hey, it's on the dowel. So as you can see, I did get it started on the exhaust manifold studs. That was probably more of a fight than it was worth, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. For tightening these head bolts down, it's going to be 3 steps, probably like 20, 40, 60, something like that. I'll look up the end spec for it. And you're going to start at the middle and work your way out in a crisscross pattern. So here, 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 and then, you know, just sort of make X's and diagonals until you go all the way out. There's 2 bolts right here that go to the timing cover. We're not worried about those yet because we've got to do cylinder head, manifolds, timing chain and guides, then timing cover. So timing cover's last. These 2 little head bolts at the front that are shorter, we're not worried about those right now. What do I got, an artery there? It's crazy. It's fine. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if you're even paying attention. Not one of you told me, hey, you forgot to put the exhaust manifold gasket on when I took all that time to get the cylinder head lined up on the exhaust manifold. So, we're going to do that again. It couldn't possibly damage the head gasket any farther. Foot on starter solenoid as per the manual. See, that gasket's fine. Not a mark on it, except for those ones right there. Don't look at that. That's much better. See, look at that. There's a gasket. I've gotten better at this since this is like the 4th time we've done it. I keep forgetting. Keep forgetting. Gaskets never be the same again. I don't think they can copyright if I change the lyrics. There we go. Nailed it. 23rd time's the charm. Look, we have the manifold gasket on now. Hopefully we won't have to do this again before the blood loss makes you lightheaded. Now, as I was saying before, and you may or may not have heard, depending on how I edit this, the head bolts are not torqued to yield. And the ones that were on the cylinder that had the exhaust cracks, they have some surface rust, but there's no pitting. There is no issues with them. They're not eaten away at all, not corroded. So I just wiped that off with a little bit of oil. We're going to use those again. If you didn't hear me say that the first time because I made this video shorter, I just said it now. I can't reach those. Whew. All right. Now, I'll go ahead and spin these down to just touching, and then we'll find out what the 3-step process is for tightening these head bolts, which, as you may or may not have heard me say before, is an X pattern starting from the middle. Here, 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 until you're done. As you're just snugging these down, just to touch. It doesn't have to be in an X pattern. Everything's fine. I just looked up the head bolt torque spec for this, and it is 80 foot-pounds, and we're going to do it in 3 steps. We're going to go 20, 50, 80, or 30, 60, 80, something like that. Oh, I need to wipe some of that off a little bit, huh?
Total bloodbath.
We're going to start here in the middle, and I've decided to go 30, 60, 80. I'm not a huge fan of the beam style torque wrench, but I do think they're more accurate than this. But for what we're doing today, on a non-race engine that's just, stock, run-of-the-mill rebuild, click type torque wrench is just fine. And this is one of the main advantages that a 4-cylinder has over a V8. Half as many head bolts. I like that, especially when it comes to torquing things. Okay, and remember, if you got this style torque wrench, when you're done, go ahead and spin it back down to release all the whatever's on the inside. I don't know what it does, but don't leave it set up here at like 80, 100 foot-pounds. I'm sure it's not good for it. Next up, we're going to put the exhaust manifolds and intake manifolds back on. Then we'll probably break for the day because we're losing some daylight here and I can't go inside because I've got too much crap in the garage, as I mentioned at the beginning. Now, it's times like these that doing a little bit of extra work at the beginning, like, struggling to put this exhaust manifold back onto the cylinder head while lining the cylinder head up and probably ruining the head gasket, really pays off. I really was not looking forward to trying to pry this manifold back up into place and get it onto these studs. I'm pretty sure that was still the best way to do it, despite it not going incredibly well. No, a ground wire is not going to go on exhaust. That's dumb. Where did this come from? Did it? I'll put it on the top. I didn't take a picture. You should take pictures of things when you take them apart, so you know how they go back together. I should have done that. I didn't done that, though. And since I didn't record anything when I took this apart, because I was kind of in a hurry, yeah, I don't remember where that went. And the likelihood of you having leftover fasteners goes up exponentially with each day this truck is apart. There's a mathematic formula for that. I've seen it. I think the last step for today is to go ahead and put the spark plugs back in the holes so that nothing goes down those cylinders overnight. Small creatures, land animals, vegetation, whatever. Here's the spark plugs. As you can see, they're not great. This one is particularly bad. I bet that was out of 2 or 3. I'm not going to tighten these down right now. I'm going to forget to do that later. When we restart this at the end, that's when I'll figure out that I forgot to tighten these down the rest of the way. And we'll do it then. I do like this heat shield exhaust manifold gasket. It's just kind of a pain to get around when I'm doing things like this. But I do like the fact that I think it protects the plug wires really, really well. It's a good idea. Either that or it transfers heat from the manifold and the cylinder head directly to the plug wires and shortens their lifespan. I'm not really sure. All right. And the next scene will be tomorrow. It's day 2. We're going to put this intake on. I've been soaking it overnight with Super Clean, and what do you know? It got pretty clean. Good stuff. I do, however, still have to clean off the mounting surface. Yep. Let's remove our protective coating. I've already put the intake manifold gasket on just to make sure it did line up, and it did, which is nice. Now my 1/4 inch drive ratchet so we can finish doing this, and note to self, stop leaving tools under cars. All right, now we're on to that top hose. This is the factory clamp. This is the crappy parts store clamp that I have, and that's what we're doing. We're just going to set that there for now while I remember where I put things. Just finished installing the carburetor the rest of the way. We've got it tightened down. I've got the transmission linkage on and the return spring. I can't put anything else on until we go forward. Fuel pump is reinstalled. We got the line from the tank, we got the return, and this is to the carburetor. See, look, goes to the carburetor. All right, I guess up next we got to start dealing with these timing gears. Great. And from the factory, this Mitsubishi engine came with 2 balance shafts, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. Passenger side is attached to the oil pump, and it connects the driver's side with this chain. The sprocket goes onto the crankshaft pulley. I've got a balance shaft eliminator kit, which is an oil pump gasket, a shorter chain. This is the block off for the driver's side oil passage, and this replaces the passenger side. Is basically just a bolt. So the only thing in this setup we need to reuse is this oil pump. But first up, we have to deal with the camshaft, crankshaft timing chain, sprocket, and guides. So I guess that's where we'll start. I already have the crankshaft up on top dead center, so really I just need to worry about where this camshaft is, and then everything should line up. And it should be kind of easy-ish, maybe. I don't know. I can count on one finger the number of times I've done a job like this, so I guess don't necessarily take my word for this.
But don't take my word for it.
Make sure you do your own research and double check things as you go. Okie dokie. Okay, we've got the camshaft timing gear back on. Let me show you how all this lines up. On your cam sprocket, the dowel pin should be at the 12 o'clock position, and you should have one darker link on this chain that lines up with the timing dot on the cam gear. Down on the bottom on the crank gear, there is a similar darker chain link, and there is a dot that is on that crank gear, but I can't see it from here because the chain is covering it up. But that's how that whole setup lines up. Then put your two static guides on. Longer one goes on the driver's side, shorter one on the passenger side. That'll hold everything in place, and we can move on. And for the next step in this process, we've got the oil pump here, and I've got the balance shaft that's attached to it chucked up in this vise. We need to get this bolt off because we need to get the oil pump off the balance shaft. There we go. Once we get this bolt off, then we'll take the oil pump off the balance shaft and we'll put the little blank spacer in. Ta-da! Look at that. Oil pump, balance shaft. Don't need balance shaft. It will fall. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the back of this oil pump. Okay, oil pump cleaned up. Now let's put that pin in. It goes right in here where that balance shaft came out of, just like that. And then all it does is get bolted in with the same bolt. It's pretty simple. Even give you a nice little flat surface to go ahead and pinch this down in a vise so you can tighten the bolt back. Make sure you don't damage the oil pump surface. Make sure it's not sitting on the vise. There we go. And tighten this down to a lot of foot-pounds. Just that's good. Oil pump gasket, oil pump with that balance shaft removed, and that goes down here on the passenger side, and it's oriented this way with the bolt above the sprocket hub, because you've got right here is where your oil tensioner is going to go for the timing chain, so that's got to face the chain. Well, we can't really tighten that oil pump down all the way because I need to put the sprocket on and the other chain because that guide goes on last. So this is our brand new oil pump drive sprocket, and that's going to slip on just like that. And since this doesn't have to do with cam crank timing, there is no special way that these have to line up. Now is the time on sprockets when we dance. Then what we'll do is we will realize that we've got this on backwards. Okay. Note to self. This has to go on with this way facing outward. Otherwise, the chain doesn't line up. Great. Put our bolt in here so nothing else moves. Probably be a good idea to look up what the torque spec is for this, but it's going to go just tight once again. Also, of note, this oil pump is very specific in bold letters and asterisks and all kinds of stuff. Do not put sealant between the pump and the block, just the gasket. Do not, it said many, many times, do not put any silicone or sealant additional between the two, or failure will result. It's two flatly machined surfaces, which of course I have ruined because I used a wire wheel to scrape the gasket off, but yeah, it said don't do it, so I won't. Now we need to try to get that new oil. That's going to be a pain. I'm going to have to take these guides back off because I need to get the tensioner on here. I probably should have put that on with the oil pump. Yeah. Okay. And the short side of this shoe goes up and the rounded side goes down. Hopefully that mark is still lined up. I can't really see it. And we're going to put the camshaft back on. Crisis probably averted. Nobody knows for sure. Everything is looking pretty good. I went ahead and tightened down that oil pump bolt. Chain is on. Guide looks good. All the oil pump bolts are tight. Hydraulic tensioner's on. Guides are on. Everything's still lined up. I think we're ready to put the timing cover on. But as you can see, this timing cover is filthy. So it needs a serious cleaning. And when you've got parts that need a serious cleaning, what you need is super clean. Just spray this thing down with super clean. Take a nylon brush, scrub off any of the parts that are really tough. Then after that, spray it down with a little bit more super clean. Then wipe it off with a rag. And we should be good. And there we go. Just a few minutes later, with some super clean and a nylon brush, that is almost as good as new. Now that we've got this timing cover all cleaned up, and I've got the old seal pulled out, which you can just tap it out from the backside with a hammer and a punch, I'm going to put this new seal in. And the best way to do that is, if you have one, find a socket that's close to the right size. This is like a 1-inch drive socket that I basically don't use for much else. And we're going to tap it down into place until it's pretty much flush with the front of this timing cover. Just like that. We're going to do the last step in this balance shaft elimination process, and that is this bushing. And really all it's doing is it's going to cover up this oil passage. Otherwise you'd have no oil pressure. The oil would just shoot right out of here, back down the block, and you'd have like 5-10 psi max. I looked at the instruction manual, and no kidding, it just says take a wooden block and a hammer and smack that into place. And there we go. Yeah. Okay. So after much fighting, I managed to get the 6 oil pan bolts back on, which has proved to be the hardest part of this entire job. They're like a 1/2 inch long, and you're going upside down and backwards trying to line them up. Real pain. Timing cover all on, which means the alternator and the power steering pump had to go on because both of them utilize a bolt from the timing cover for part of their tension system. This is not a press fit, it's a slip-on, just like that. Awesome. And in case there was any doubts about how accurate I was getting that timing chain back on, there's the top dead center timing mark. There's T for top dead center.
He's good. He's real good.
That's dead on. So we should be good. I'm not really worried about that. It's going to be another long day tomorrow, though. Welcome back to day 3 of this old head gasket. I've got most of the stuff wrapped up on it, but I'll show you where we're at. So early this morning I came out and knocked out the boring things like reinstalling the radiator and putting the belts and the fan back on. I did set the valve lash cold already, which I set to 14 thousandths because it said warm 10. So it may be a little loose, but it should be okay. And the way you do valve lash is EOIC, just like everything else. When the exhaust is opening, you do the intake. When the intake is closing, you do the exhaust side. So you're just rotating the engine over by hand, basically getting each cam lobe on its lowest possible spot. And then you're going to use a flat blade screwdriver and a 12mm wrench and a feeler gauge. Put the feeler gauge in there, turn the screwdriver until you get drag on that, then you lock it down with the 12mm. And you keep rotating and go base circle until you get them all done. Oh, yeah, nope. Look at that. Really struggling with fluids today. And it's too late. It's already all over the cylinder head. Crank pulley's tight. These are snugged up on the fan clutch. Belts are tight. And I did tighten the cam gear nut before I put this valve cover back on. All the hoses are tight that I can tell. I put that back on because I couldn't get the tube to come off the exhaust. Temporarily, that little valve is going to be there. Those hoses are tight back here. Carburetor, everything is tight there. Clamps are tight. All right, let's turn the key and try it. You ever just been really, really tired and gotten things backwards? I did. I have. I will again. I put the distributor in thinking top dead center meant intake valve would open next. That's exactly backwards, or 180 out. Technically, top dead center means the next step should be the power stroke going down, then an exhaust stroke going up, then an intake stroke going back down. So I was exactly halfway in between where I thought I was, which means I was double what I should have been backwards the other way. Okay, well, now I think it's right. We'll try it. I'm going to go ahead and keep an eye on this for a few minutes. We'll let it warm up, burn the oil off. Then what we'll do is we'll pull the valve cover one more time and we'll check valve lash when it's warm, which should be 10 thousandths. That's the last thing we definitely need to check. And we need to make sure that water doesn't go in oil, oil doesn't go in water, temperatures come up, oil pressure stays up, and yeah. Okay, I just set the timing on it. It's about 10 degrees with the vacuum advance unplugged. It's about 38 degrees total. I don't know how that works out on these. I have just discovered that this air tube has an exhaust leak right here, so that makes that just sound brilliant. I really need to get rid of that thing. Oil pressure good, temperature up in the middle. It's time to shut it down and double check our valve lash. Okay. We're going to go ahead and put a socket and ratchet back onto the crank. I'm going to start here and work my way back instead of going randomly about as they come around. Again, all you need for this job is a screwdriver and a 12mm wrench. I'm assuming we're going to have to make changes. I'm not certain of that yet. It should be 10 thousandths when warm. It is more than 10 thousandths. Okay, well, ow. Not only is that very hot, oh, I just about dropped a wrench right down basically into the oil pan. But I think my setting of 14 thousandths was maybe a bit too much, so we're probably going to end up having to do all of these. I probably should have done like 12 thousandths cold. Just drag. Yeah, I'm off by like a quarter of a turn on everything, probably. Okay. Well, on the upside, we're going to get to do all of these again. I believe the best method for this is going to be time-lapse, so here we go. And valve cover back on for the first time for the last time.
At last, we meet for the first time for the last time.
Probably, maybe. You know what really helps when you start vehicles, when you do this sort of thing, is to not have your ratchet still on the crank pulley when you start it. It kind of keeps the fan from spinning. And who knows what else it could do. That's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is now fixed and drivable. I just need to really fix that exhaust leak. That thing sucks. Alright, everybody. That's going to do it for this time. It's probably almost definitely one of my longer episodes. The only thing I have left to do is put the bumper on. You don't need to see me do that. This truck works, and it was a head gasket issue. That's what you came here for. Maybe. Or to see me fail, which I didn't. And with that, I have no clue what we're going to do next time, but when we do it, I'll see you next time.